My daughter blocked my number. After heart surgery. Then, the surgeon whispered, I remember you from 32 years ago. I never thought I'd be staring at my phone in a hospital bed, realizing my own daughter had blocked my number. 3 days after they cracked open my chest for a triple bypass, and I had nobody to pick me up. The discharge nurse was telling me I needed to be out in 2 hours, and I'm sitting there with no ride home and no money for a cab to my apartment 45 miles away. My name's Charlie Hendricks. I'm 58 years old, and for 32 years I worked at the Allegheny Steel Mill here in Pittsburgh, until my back gave out 3 years ago. Herniated discs from lifting heavy steel plates day after day. Had to retire early on disability, which barely covers rent and groceries in this economy. But I was proud of what I'd built. After my wife Jennifer died, when our daughter Sarah was 8, I raised that girl by myself. Worked double shifts, skipped meals, wore the same work boots for 10 years, all so Sarah could have opportunities I never had. And it worked, or so I thought. Sarah got into Carnegie Mellon, then landed a marketing job at one of those big firms downtown, the kind with glass elevators and coffee that cost more than my hourly wage used to be. She married Brad, some investment banker who drives a BMW and wears suits that cost more than my monthly pension. They live in a house in Sewickley with more bathrooms than rooms in my entire place. I was happy for her, proud even. Sure, the visits got less frequent, phone calls got shorter. Last Christmas was just a text with a gift card to some fancy restaurant I couldn't afford even with the $50 on it. But I told myself she was just busy. Successful people are always busy, right? Then came the chest pains. Started about 6 months ago, but I figured it was stress from trying to fix my leaky roof on a fixed income. When you're living on disability, every little problem becomes a major crisis. The roof leak turned into damaged drywall, which meant mold concerns, which meant potentially having to move to somewhere I couldn't afford. One Tuesday morning in March, I was in the parking lot of my building, trying to figure out how to carry a bag of groceries up to my apartment without aggravating my back. That's when the pain hit, like someone had grabbed my heart with a vice and started squeezing. I dropped the bag, eggs and milk exploding across the asphalt, and went down hard on my knees. My neighbor, Mrs. Linda Anderson, found me there about 10 minutes later. She's a retired school teacher, one of the few people in my building who still makes eye contact when we pass in the hallway. She called 911 and stayed with me until the ambulance came. The ER at UPMC Presbyterian was chaos. Gunshot victims, overdoses, car accidents. The usual Tuesday night in Pittsburgh. I waited 4 hours just to see a doctor, lying on a gurney in the hallway with chest pains that came and went in waves. When Dr. Phillips finally examined me, his face got serious real quick. Mr. Hendricks, I'm ordering an immediate cardiac catheterization. Your EKG shows signs of significant heart damage. The procedure was like something out of a science fiction movie. They fed a tiny camera through an artery in my wrist all the way to my heart. I watched on the monitor as they navigated through my blood vessels like some kind of medical submarine. Jesus Christ, the cardiologist muttered, staring at the screen. That bad? I asked. He turned to look at me. 3 major arteries, 90% blocked. You're having what we call a silent heart attack. Has been going on for months, probably. You need emergency surgery. How emergency? Within the week, or you're not going to see your next birthday. That's when the numbers hit me. Triple bypass surgery, $35,000. Medicare would cover about $28,000 of it, leaving me responsible for $7,000 plus whatever complications might arise. On my disability income, that might as well have been $70,000, but money was the least of my problems. They explained I'd need someone to help me for at least 3 weeks afterward. Someone to drive me to follow-up appointments, help me shower, make sure I didn't lift anything heavier than a coffee cup. Someone to watch for signs of infection or complications that could kill me. I had one person in the world I could call. I dialed Sarah's number that night from my hospital bed. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. You've reached Sarah Hendricks. I'm either with a client or ignoring your call. Leave a message. Classic Sarah humor. Except it didn't feel funny anymore. I left a message. Sarah, it's Dad. I'm in the hospital. They're saying I need heart surgery. Please call me back. She didn't call that night, or the next morning, or that afternoon. I called again that evening. This time she answered, but I could hear music and voices in the background. She was at some kind of event. "Dad, this is really terrible timing," she said. I could barely hear her over the noise. "Brad and I are at this charity fundraiser for the children's hospital. Can I call you tomorrow?" "Sarah, I'm in the hospital. They're saying I need heart surgery." The background noise got muffled. She must have stepped outside or found a quiet corner. "What? When did this happen? Why didn't you call me sooner?" "I did call you. Last night. I left a message. I've been so busy with this event." "What kind of surgery?" "Triple bypass. They want to do it Friday." "I'm scared, honey. I need you to be here." There was this long pause. Too long. I could hear her breathing, but she wasn't saying anything. "Friday?" "Dad, I have the Morrison account presentation." "Friday. It's been scheduled for months. This account is worth $2 million to the firm." "Sarah, please. I might die." Another pause. Even longer this time. "You're not going to die, Dad. You're tough as nails. You raised me by yourself, didn't you? Look, I'll try to visit over the weekend. After the surgery. Okay? I promise." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there in that hospital bed, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My daughter, the little girl I'd sacrificed everything for, had just prioritized a business meeting over her father's life-threatening surgery. I called her back immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same thing. By the third try, I got a message I'd never heard before. "The number you have dialed is not in service." She'd blocked my number. That night was the longest of my life. I lay in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped every few seconds, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand how I'd ended up so completely alone. The guy in the bed next to me had his whole family there. Wife, kids, even his mother-in-law, who couldn't stop fussing over his blankets. They had brought homemade cookies and kept asking the nurses if there was anything else they could do. Meanwhile, I had nobody. 58 years old, and the only person I had in the world had just cut me off like I was some telemarketer. The surgery was scheduled for Friday morning at 7 a.m. Thursday night, a nurse came in to prep me, shaved my chest, gave me some kind of antibiotic soap to wash with, explained what would happen. "Dr. Castellano is one of the best cardiac surgeons in the state," she said. "You're in excellent hands. How long will I be under?" "About 4 to 6 hours, depending on complications. When you wake up, you'll be in the ICU with a breathing tube. That's normal. Don't try to talk or move around too much." "What if something goes wrong?" She paused in her note-taking. "Do you have any family we should call? Next of kin?" "I have a daughter, but..." I trailed off. "How do you explain that your only child has blocked your number? Emergency contact?" I gave her Mrs. Anderson's information. My 72-year-old neighbor was now my closest relationship. That's when it really hit me how far I'd fallen. Friday morning came fast. They wheeled me down to the operating room at 6:30, and I remember thinking this might be the last time I'm conscious. The anesthesiologist was this young guy who looked like he should be in high school, but his hands were steady as he inserted the IV line. "Count backwards from 10, he said. I got to 8. When I woke up, it felt like I'd been hit by a freight train loaded with steel beams. There was a tube down my throat, machines everywhere, and pain like nothing I'd ever experienced. They'd literally sawed through my sternum and spread my ribs apart to get to my heart. Every breath felt like someone was stabbing me with a knife. But I was alive. The breathing tube came out the next day, and that's when I could finally talk. The first thing I asked for was my phone. I wanted to try calling Sarah one more time, maybe leave a voicemail letting her know the surgery had gone okay. The number was still blocked. Sarah didn't visit. That weekend. She didn't send flowers. She didn't even send a text. It was like I died on that operating table, and nobody had bothered to tell her. On Monday, 3 days after the surgery, the nurses started talking about discharge planning. That's when reality hit me square in the face. Catherine Williams, everyone called her Kate, was the head nurse on the cardiac recovery floor. She'd been checking on me regularly, and I think she'd noticed I never had visitors. Not once. "Mr. Hendricks," she said Monday morning, looking at my chart. "You're healing beautifully. Dr. Castellano wants to discharge you Wednesday afternoon. We need to discuss your home care situation." "What kind of home care? You can't drive for 6 weeks. You can't lift anything over 5 pounds for 8 weeks. You can't climb stairs without assistance. You'll need help with basic tasks like showering, changing bandages, preparing meals. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Who's going to be helping you at home? I'll manage. Mr. Hendricks, this isn't optional. Hospital policy requires a discharge plan that includes adequate home support. Otherwise, we can't release you. Then I'll hire someone. Do you understand what that costs? A home health aide is $25 an hour, minimum 8 hours a day. That's $1,400 a week, and insurance doesn't cover most of it. I did the math quickly. On my disability income, I couldn't afford that for more than a few days. What are my options? Family is usually the first choice. Do you have anyone who could stay with you or let you stay with them? I thought about lying, but what was the point? My daughter lives here in Pittsburgh, but she's busy with work. Kate didn't say anything, but I could see the judgment in her eyes. She'd probably heard that excuse 1,000 times from families who just didn't want to be bothered. Let me talk to Dr. Castellano, she said finally. Maybe we can arrange something. An hour later, Dr. Castellano walked into my room. I'd met him briefly before the surgery, but this was the first real conversation we'd had. He was probably in his late 60s, silver hair, the kind of presence that made you feel calmer just by being in the room. Mr. Hendricks, he said, pulling up a chair next to my bed. How are you feeling? Like someone cracked open my chest and put it back together with duct tape and hope. He smiled. That's not far from the truth, though I use slightly more sophisticated materials. Kate tells me you're having trouble arranging care at home. I'll figure something out. She also tells me you live alone, 45 miles from here, with no family support available. I said, I'll figure it out. Dr. Castellano was quiet for a moment, studying my face. He had this way of looking at you like he could see right through whatever you were trying to hide. Mr. Hendricks, I'm going to be very direct with you. You cannot go home alone. Not yet. Without proper support, there's a 40% chance you'll be back here within 2 weeks with complications that could kill you. Heart surgery isn't like getting your appendix out. Your body has been through massive trauma. What do you suggest? I can't afford some fancy nursing facility. He leaned back in his chair, and something in his expression changed. I have a suggestion. It's unconventional, but I want you to consider it. Okay. I have a large house in Shadyside, more space than I know what to do with since my wife Nancy passed away 5 years ago. I also have medical staff on call 24/7 for my own health needs. What if you stayed with me for the next 3 weeks? I stared at him. I'm sorry. What? You'd have your own room, round-the-clock medical supervision, proper meals, everything you need to recover safely. Dr. Castellano, I can't accept that. Why would you even offer something like that to a patient you barely know? He stood up and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Let me ask you something, Charlie. Do you remember working at the steel mill in the late 1980s? I was confused by the sudden change of subject. Yeah, I worked there for over 30 years. Why? Do you remember an apartment building on Carson Street? 4 stories, red brick, building number 447? Sure, I knew that area. What about it? He turned to face me. In January 1987, there was a young medical student living on the 3rd floor of that building, poor as dirt, working nights at a gas station to pay for tuition and books. One day, he found an envelope in his mailbox with no return address. Inside was $400 in cash and a note that said, "Keep going, someone believes in you." My chest tightened, and it had nothing to do with the surgery. That was 32 years ago, I managed to say. How do you remember something like that? I was that medical student, Charlie. That $400 paid for my biochemistry textbooks and kept me fed for 6 weeks. More importantly, it came at a moment when I was ready to quit everything. I was exhausted, broke, working 30 hours a week at that gas station on top of a full course load. I'd been living on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for months. I didn't know what to say. Over the years, I'd left envelopes for maybe a dozen people, always anonymously, always when I saw someone really struggling. I never wanted credit for it, never told anyone, not even Jennifer. It was just something I did when I had a few extra dollars and saw someone who needed it more than I did. I kept that note, Dr. Castellano continued, 32 years, and I still have it in my desk drawer at home. Keep going. Someone believes in you. Do you have any idea what those words meant to a kid who was convinced he was too stupid and too poor to become a doctor? I don't remember writing any note. You probably wrote dozens of them, but that one changed my life. I was literally planning to drop out the next week, go back to my hometown in Ohio, maybe get a job at my uncle's auto repair shop. Instead, I stayed. Graduated third in my class, got into residency at Johns Hopkins, eventually became chief of cardiac surgery here. He sat back down. When Kate told me about your situation, I looked at your file. Charles Hendricks, former steelworker, lived in the Carson Street area in the 1980s. I went home and checked my old journals. Yes, I keep journals. And there it was, January 15th, 1987. Found money in mailbox today. Someone believes in me. You kept a journal entry about it. I wrote about it every year on the anniversary. It became a reminder that there are good people in the world, people who help others without expecting anything in return. He leaned forward. Charlie, when I learned you had no one to help you recover, no way to get home safely, I saw a chance to repay a debt that's been on my mind for 3 decades. It wasn't a debt. I didn't do it expecting anything back. I know. That's exactly why I want to help now. 3 weeks, Charlie. Let me make sure you recover properly. Consider it one act of kindness repaying another. I wanted to say no. Pride's a funny thing. Even when you're desperate, it makes you want to refuse help. But I was tired, so damn tired, and the thought of struggling alone in my apartment, trying to change bandages I couldn't reach, climbing stairs that might kill me, not being able to drive to follow-up appointments. It terrified me more than I wanted to admit. Okay, I said quietly, thank you. But I pay my own way somehow. We'll work something out. That Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Castellano's driver, Leo, picked me up in a black Mercedes that was probably worth more than I'd made in 5 years of steelwork. Leo was about my age, retired Pittsburgh city cop, who'd been working for Dr. Castellano for the past decade. Doc's a good man, Leo told me as we drove through neighborhoods I'd only seen on television. Lost his wife Nancy to cancer 5 years back. Been pretty lonely in that big house ever since. Think you might be good for each other. The drive took about 30 minutes through tree-lined streets with houses set back from the road, gates, and circular driveways. This was shady-side money, the kind of money that built Pittsburgh back when steel was king. Dr. Castellano's house wasn't just big, it was a mansion. 3 stories of stone and brick, with gardens that looked like they needed a full-time crew to maintain. Leo helped me out of the car and up the front steps, where a woman in scrubs was waiting. Mr. Hendricks, I'm Diane Foster, she said. I'll be your primary nurse during your stay. Dr. Castellano thought you'd be more comfortable on the first floor, no stairs to worry about. She showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment. There was a king-size bed with a headboard that looked hand-carved, a sitting area with leather chairs by a fireplace, and a bathroom with a walk-in shower and grab bars already installed. Dr. Castellano had the grab bars put in yesterday, Diane explained. The shower seat and raised toilet seat are new too. Everything you need for a safe recovery. I sat down on the edge of the bed and nearly sank through to the floor. This mattress probably cost more than my car. This is too much, I said. I can't accept all this. Diane smiled. Dr. Castellano was very specific about your care plan. He said you're stubborn and proud, and that I should ignore any protests about being too much trouble. She handed me a small bell. This is for emergencies only. Otherwise, I'll check on you every 4 hours, help with medications, and be available for whatever you need. Dr. Castellano appeared in the doorway. Everything satisfactory? It's incredible. But I meant what I said about paying my way. We'll discuss that later. Right now, you need to rest and heal. Dinner's at 6. Gloria makes the best Italian food in Pittsburgh. Or, if you're too tired, Diane can bring a tray to your room. The first few days were a blur of medication schedules, gentle exercises, and slow walks around the house. Dr. Castellano checked on me every morning before leaving for the hospital, and every evening when he got home. We started having dinner together in his dining room, which was bigger than most restaurants. Tell me about your daughter, he said one evening over Gloria's incredible lasagna. What's to tell? I raised her alone after my wife died, sacrificed everything so she could have a better life than I did, worked myself into the ground to pay for her education, her wedding, everything. I pushed food around my plate, and when I needed her most, she disappeared. Have you tried calling her since the surgery? Numbers still blocked. Maybe she doesn't know the surgery went well. She could have called the hospital to check. She has my insurance information, my social security number. If she wanted to know, she'd know. Dr. Castellano was quiet for a moment. I had a sister who did something similar when our mother was dying. Couldn't be bothered to visit, always had excuses. After the funeral, she showed up asking about inheritance. What did you do? Told her exactly what I thought of her. Haven't spoken since. He set down his fork. Sometimes I wonder if I should have handled it differently. On my 10th day there, something unexpected happened. The phone rang during lunch, and Diane came to find me in the garden where I was doing my walking exercises. Mr. Hendricks, you have a call. Your daughter. My hands started shaking as I took the cordless phone. Dad? Sarah's voice sounded different, nervous, maybe even guilty. Sarah, I called the hospital. They said you were discharged over a week ago. Where are you? I'm staying with a friend during recovery. What friend? Dad? You don't have friends with... She caught herself, but the implication hung in the air. You don't have friends with money. A friend who actually showed up when I needed help. Dad, don't be like that. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Work has been absolutely insane. But Brad and I want to come visit now. See how you're doing. Maybe this Sunday? Something in her tone felt calculated, too eager, too sudden. How did you get this number? I called around until I found you. Look, can you text me the address? We'll be there Sunday at 2. I gave her Dr. Castellano's address. There was a long pause. Shady Side? Dad? Whose house are you staying at exactly? I'll see you Sunday, Sarah. I hung up before she could ask more questions, but my hands were still shaking. After 2 weeks of silence, she suddenly wanted to visit the day after finding out where I was staying. And she was bringing Brad with her. This wasn't about checking on her father's recovery. This was about something else entirely. Dr. Castellano found me in the garden an hour later, staring at nothing and trying to process what had just happened. Your daughter called, he said. It wasn't a question. She wants to visit Sunday. First time she's bothered to check on me since the surgery. I looked at him. She got real interested when I mentioned the address. Charlie, I need to tell you something. After you mentioned your daughter's husband was in investment banking, I had my attorney do some checking. My stomach dropped. What kind of checking? Brad Hendricks works for Morrison & Associates downtown. The firm's been losing major clients for the past 18 months. They're under investigation by the SEC for fraudulent investment practices. Your son-in-law specifically has been using client funds for personal expenses. He sat down on the stone bench beside me. They took out a second mortgage on their house 6 months ago. Credit cards maxed out. Sarah's spending habits combined with Brad's legal troubles have put them on the edge of bankruptcy. Why would you investigate them? Because I wanted to know who had abandoned my friend when he needed them most. And what I found concerns me. He paused. Charlie, I think Sarah is coming Sunday because someone told her, you're staying with Dr. Anthony Castellano, chief of cardiac surgery, one of the wealthiest doctors in Pennsylvania. The implications hit me like a punch to the chest. You think she's after money? I think she's desperate. And desperate people make calculated choices. I've arranged for my attorney to be here Sunday afternoon, just in case. Just in case what? In case I'm right about their motives. Sunday came too fast. I was nervous, part of me still hoping I was wrong, that Sarah genuinely cared about her father's recovery. Maybe she'd been scared about the surgery and didn't know how to handle it. Maybe she'd been waiting until I was stronger to visit. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Leo answered it, and I heard Sarah's voice in the foyer. Too loud, too cheerful. Wow, this place is incredible. She appeared in the living room doorway with Brad behind her. Sarah looked exactly the same, put together, professional, like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Brad was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly disability check, his eyes immediately cataloging everything in the room. Dad! Sarah rushed over and hugged me carefully, mindful of my healing chest. It was the first time she'd touched me in over a year. You look good, really good. Much better than I expected after major surgery. No thanks to you, I said quietly. Dad, come on. I explained about work, but I'm here now. She looked around the room. This is really something. Dr. Castellano, I can't thank you enough for taking care of my father. Dr. Castellano stood by the fireplace, watching both of them carefully. Your father and I go back many years. We do? I said, playing along. The envelope, Charlie, 1987. Brad had made himself comfortable on the leather sofa, still taking inventory. Dr. Castellano, this home is absolutely magnificent. You must have an excellent financial advisor. My late wife Nancy had wonderful taste, Dr. Castellano replied. I just try to maintain what she built. Sarah sat down next to me, her hand on my arm. Dad, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there for the surgery. You know how important my career is to our family's future. Our family? Well, Brad and I are planning to have children soon. We need financial stability. Dr. Castellano began telling them the story about the envelope, how a struggling medical student had found $400 and a note that changed his life. As he spoke, I watched Sarah's expression. She wasn't listening like a daughter hearing about her father's quiet generosity. She was listening like someone calculating the value of a relationship. Dad, I had no idea you did things like that, she said when he finished. That's really something. Your father changed my life 32 years ago, Dr. Castellano said. I'm simply repaying a debt. Brad leaned forward. What kind of debt exactly? I mean, financially speaking? The room went quiet. Dr. Castellano's attorney, who'd been waiting in the study, chose that moment to enter. Dr. Castellano, you asked me to join you at 2:30. Charles, this is my attorney, Richard Walsh. Richard, these are Charlie's family members. Brad's face went pale when he heard the name. Richard Walsh was one of the most prominent attorneys in Pittsburgh, the kind who handled estates worth hundreds of millions. Actually, Walsh said, opening a briefcase, I have some documents that concern Mr. Brad Hendricks directly. What kind of documents? Sarah asked. SEC investigation materials. Mr. Hendricks, you're scheduled to appear before federal investigators next month regarding misappropriation of client funds at Morrison & Associates. Brad shot to his feet. You can't discuss an ongoing investigation. I can when it directly affects my client's family. Walsh pulled out a folder. Mr. Hendricks, your firm collapsed Friday afternoon. Federal agents seized all assets. Your clients have lost approximately $12 million, and you're personally liable for $3.2 million in fraudulent trades. Sarah looked back and forth between Brad and Walsh. What is he talking about? Your husband has been stealing from his clients for over 2 years, Walsh continued. The house, the cars, the lifestyle, all funded by money that belonged to other people. I watched Sarah's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and then dawning horror. Brad, tell them this is ridiculous. Brad couldn't meet her eyes. Sarah, I can explain. Oh my God, she whispered. Is this why you wanted to come here today? Is this about money? The room erupted. Sarah started crying, Brad started making excuses, and Dr. Castellano watched it all with the calm expression of a surgeon who'd seen everything. Finally, Walsh spoke up. Mr. Hendricks, you have 2 choices. You can flee and face federal charges as a fugitive, or you can cooperate with authorities and face 7 to 10 years in federal prison. That's when Sarah turned to me with desperation in her eyes. Dad, can Dr. Castellano help? Can he loan us money for attorneys? We're family. And that's when I knew. Even now, even after everything, she was still thinking about what she could get from me. Sarah, I said quietly, when did you last call to check on me before today? Dad, that's not fair. I've been dealing with all this stress. When? She couldn't answer. I almost died 2 weeks ago. I was alone in a hospital room for 3 days, and you couldn't be bothered to call. Now you're here asking for money. I stood up slowly. I think you should leave. Dad, please. I'm still your daughter. No, you're not. A daughter would have been there when I needed her. A daughter would have cared whether I lived or died. I looked at Brad. And you saw an opportunity to manipulate an old man and his wealthy friend. You're both exactly who I thought you were. Dr. Castellano walked them to the door. I could hear Sarah crying in the foyer, begging for another chance. But I was done. 6 months later, Brad was convicted on 14 federal counts. Sarah divorced him before sentencing and moved back to Pittsburgh. She started therapy and eventually reached out to me through Dr. Castellano. It took 2 years, but we slowly rebuilt our relationship. Real this time, based on honesty instead of obligation. When Dr. Castellano passed at 79, he left me his estate, not because I'd asked for it, but because he said I understood what really mattered. The note he left said, Use this to help others the way you helped me. Be someone's miracle. I still live in his house. Sarah visits every Sunday now, sometimes with her new fiancé, a teacher who actually likes hearing my old steel mill stories. We're planning their wedding for next spring, and every month I leave an envelope in someone's mailbox, usually $400 in a note. Keep going. Someone believes in you, because that's what I learned from all this. We save each other, not with grand gestures or public declarations, but with small kindnesses when no one's watching, with showing up when it matters, with choosing someone every single day. My daughter almost lost me, but she found her way back. And in the process, I found something I'd been missing for years, a real family, not just by blood, but by choice. Life's funny that way. The smallest acts of kindness can echo across decades, creating circles of generosity that outlast any of us. And sometimes, the people you save might just save you back. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or real estate. It's measured in who shows up when you need them most, and who you're willing to show up for in return.